Hi all, it's Renee and Bob from the Tradition School of Herbal Studies, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about Gotu Kola, Centella asiatica, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about Centella erecta. And of course, please subscribe below and follow us so that you can catch all the cool videos as we launch them. And don't forget to check out the School of Traditions herbschool.com, as well as our clinical practice at acuherbals.com. And you can find out more about all the cool classes. And now remember, the classes are online as well as in person, so wherever your comfort level is or your closeness to us. So this is Renee. Renee, what do you think about Gotu Kola?
Hey, so today we're talking to you about Gotu Kola, which is what Bob just said. And we're here in Florida, and in our latitude, it just loves to grow. This is the plant down here. If Bob wants to zoom in on it, this is a good one in the light. I want you to see that crack that's right in there. That'll be later important, and how the stem is coming from the back and the veins.
Nice shadow out of there.
So Gotu Kola is one of those plants that crosses over from dogma to dogma. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, if this plant grows, it's used in the same way. And I hate that term, so I'd like to say it supports us in the same way. That from an Ayurvedic and Chinese standpoint, the Gotu Kola is used to help stimulate the brain. It looks like a brain, it has hemispheres. It'll help to oxygenate and repair things. It's used as a salad green or in soups, like what Bob would say was a pot herb. I think it tastes bitter. Bob munches on it like a cow. And I think that it's something that's really important for us to know. It's one of two that we have in what's called a dui yao, a herbal pairing or a sisterhood. And we have those things in Western herbalism as well as Chinese and Ayurvedic and all the ones you know. It's just not called that. That's a Chinese term. So Gotu Kola in particular here in Florida is the one that you're seeing, which is a Centella. And it's also one that looks like a thumb and is upright, so it's erectus. And so it's something to look for. So we do have that naturally growing.
Do you find that both the Centella asiatica and the Centella erectus have the same function, same properties?
I do feel like they do, with the exception of the erectus, like it in its term, in its name, has a more upward motion, but they both guide towards the brain in the spinal column and the spinal cord. They help with repair, they'll help with oxygenation, they'll help with stimulation, focus, clean living, but they have another property.
I was going to say, I always think of that the erectus, the Florida native, is a little bit drier and a little bit more bitter when I've eaten it.
I do think it's more bitter, and so for you, what would more bitter mean?
I think that it's probably a little more drying than, even though both of them I consider somewhat drying in their nature. But maybe the erectus is a little bit drier, and because of its bitter nature, maybe has a little bit of liver function as well.
So what I would have said to my Western students, because they don't have the same teachings as a straight Chinese or straight Indian or straight Cherokee, was that it would have a guiding action. So because it's bitter, Bob, it would guide to the liver in the way that you were taught for Chinese medicine? Yeah?
Yeah.
And do we need to be careful that it's bitter in using it with things like medications?
Because it is a food, I would put the same caution as I might put with, broccoli.
Yeah, okay. So not that big of a deal.
No.
So it's also important to know that, remember I said anywhere that this grows in the world or any kind of family to it, it's used in the same way. So another thing that's shared across all of these continents and all of these cultures is that it's really very helpful for connective tissue. Now, I think that from the Western thought of surgery, so like say you're getting a surgery on your knee, that I can see the same properties that would help your brain, the oxygenation, the repair of the nervous system, sending blood flow to those areas would be a reason why it would be connective tissue in particular. I also think that affinity for the liver would help with things like the eyes. It's going to guide to those areas. In some of our other videos, we talk about those terms, dui yao and guiding. And so it's really important here in Florida that you identify it. It likes, see that, again, that pinch. It likes wet feet, so we have to be careful of two things. because it looks so much like this other plant
I was going to say, and this is a common mistake people
called
make.
dollarweed.
And this is
Look at the stem.
pennywort, dollarweed, and has very different properties and purposes, although both are edible, so you won't die if you misidentify it.
But it's important because this in no way is going to do the same thing as the Gotu Kola. The other thing is dollarweed, Gotu Kola, and this other plant called bacopa are all called pennywort, and they're all called brahmi, and they're all called dollarweed, and they're all called Gotu Kola. So you have to really know a little bit of Latin. It goes a long way, because especially in the Asian markets, you will go to get a Gotu Kola and you will be drinking dollarweed. Here in Florida, be very, very careful. It likes wet feet. We're the golf course capital of the world, so that means we're the polluted waterway capital of the world. So we have to be careful of that. So if you're wild harvesting, understand what you're doing. And the other thing that could happen is that you accidentally get dollarweed, which will help with your digestion, but not do the same things. It's not going to hurt you. It tastes a little gross.
I was going to say the dollarweed, the pennywort, the hydrocolon, whatever the heck it is. I know it more as a bitter herb that guides to liver and gallbladder and is used specifically for gallstones.
Absolutely. So it's good for you. It's
and
just
so,
not going to do the
digestive
same thing.
stimulant kind of thing, but not that same effect on the brain and the connective tissue that
No, not at all.
that is so magical about the Gotu Kola.
Anything that you have to say?
I was going to say, it's also used in Chinese medicine. It's so funny. The Chinese don't use it in the same way. Jishu Sao is in your Medica books. If you happen to have Bensky or Chen and Chen, you can look it up and you'll find the Chinese use it almost never in any classical formulas. But I like the fact that I can get it as a 5-to-1 concentrate and incorporate it in both Western and Chinese formulas as well. And so, we said a couple things like it was cerebral tonic, if you will. It helps to improve mental function. So why would I use this particular plant over another one? Is there a particular sign or symptom that we might look for?
Yeah, we'll talk about that for a second. So Bob said something that was really important, that just because it's not in the classical formula or just because they don't use it the same way doesn't mean it's not important. When you have something that's in a Medica or in a food area of the world for thousands of years, then you can promise that it's going to work the way for thousands of years they've said. But the other thing is, absolutely positively, it's got what's called a doctrine of signature of having stimulation to the brain. It looks just like the brain in the hemispheres, and then that spinal cord that's coming down. So we're thinking all things reparative, all things restorative, and anytime we have a plant that we can say is a food or restorative, the level of safety is exaggerated. Like we can use it anytime, and it's going to help to go to that connective tissue in that area and going to help to revitalize and restore damaged axons and synapses. And
for me, one of the things I always look for, I always think, we frequently combine this with another herb, Bacopa montanari.
And woodbine.
And I always think of this as a more drying herb. So we might look for phlegm causing poor memory or failure to focus.
So Bob said something that was important, that he said phlegm, and for a lot of people, they don't understand what that means. People say, I have brain fog. And so what does that mean? They don't say I have brain water. It's fog. It's literally a phlegmy color. Or when we think
and it could be sinusitis, it could be a thick tongue coating, it could be lots of those things. But I know one of my go-tos that I won't say is commonly talked about is for autism. Like, this is one of my big go-tos. If we have a kid with autism and anywhere along that spectrum, I find that this is tremendously helpful. And I see a lot of phlegm in both in the physical as well as the energetic concept of that. Yeah. And we've really seen some cognitive improvement for those kids and adults who have been diagnosed or suspected to be on the autism spectrum, that this it's one of our running jokes here at the Herb School. The dosage is yes.
Yeah. Anytime we have
that we're not afraid to say this becomes part of an infusion. This becomes part of a soup. This is a trailside nibble. I frequently will use this if I'm I maybe didn't eat the best I could have the day before, and I've got to teach, I'll frequently go out and start noshing on this just to kind of clean up and give me the clarity and focus that I need in order to teach or work with a patient.
Like I said, he does eat it like he's crazy.
Yeah.
And Bob said some important things for anybody who's not clinically trained in the way that he is, really with that Asian thought process, because he's a doctor of Oriental medicine, that when we have anything where we have a separation of our body and our mind, so we have things that will overstimulate us and we want to separate from that, that's kind of like the autistic spectrum. So something as easy as attention deficit too, because I was going to ask you, I don't know if you have anything to say about this, and you don't have to, but I was going to ask you, why do you think it helps? Do you think it helps to tame that overstimulation and get it more congruent? Why do you think it helps settle down autism?
And it's funny because of its affinity to the brain, and I think probably the brain tissues. And when we start to look at some of the dura and some of those things that are the protective covering, I think we frequently talk about leaky gut issues with autism, and we start talking about that blood-brain barrier and how is that inflammation from the gut being transferred into the brain. I think what this is probably doing is, in some form or fashion that I don't necessarily want to try to understand, that we're reducing some of that inflammatory load on either the connective tissues in the brain, like the dura and so forth, or increasing blood flow that's reducing that inflammatory response of the dura.
The other thing you said that I thought was important in this, like the dosage is just yes, and in particular this year we've had the opportunity for this to support us with a lot of children with autism, and pretty severe, and one family has heard that we've had success, so other families have come. And so it's important, again, to understand that you have cultures like in the Ayurvedic, like an Indian culture, this would be given to everybody. This would be given to the dog. It would be given to the elder. So whenever this is fed like a spoonful of food that to a special populations, we know that it's very safe. So we have a good track record.
So remember Gotu Kola? But this is Centella asiatica, the stem connecting there. It's very easy to grow in a pot in the garden. This is a wonderful thing to grow here in Florida. Ours we use almost like a ground cover. And if you didn't hear it the first time, you're going to hear it this time. This is Renee and Bob. We have Tradition School of Herbal Studies here in St. Petersburg, Florida. You can join us online or in person. We love it when you come in person. And we have from beginner all the way through clinician, with 3 nights a week. We have clinical practice for our students here, both as observers and practitioners. Make sure that you subscribe below so that you can check out all of our good videos, and come by and see our beautiful school location. And we're sitting in our garden right now in St. Petersburg, Florida on Central Avenue. Traditions School of Herbal Studies. Bye.